watching this. So excited to be here with another fantastic guest, my good friend, Robert Hanna. We met in the clubhouse days because we would club together and we have not met in person, but Robert is such an amazing example of somebody who's built their personal brand and really doing cool things in the legal space. So I'm very excited to chat with him today. He is also a recently named LinkedIn Top Voice. It's very exciting. So we are both LinkedIn Top Voices. So with that today, Robert, yay. Thank you so much for being here. Dialing, I guess, Zooming, whatever the heck, restreaming in from UK. I'm like dialing in, Rachel. You're so lame.
You're fine. And first, can I say thank you so much for having me. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours, and congratulations on your LinkedIn Top Voice and everything you're doing. You're right. We did sort of connect in the clubhouse days, but what you've continued to go on and do and what you do is just thoroughly impressive. So I'm super excited to be collaborating again. And I know we're going to do lots more things. And as you say, we haven't met in person yet, but I believe, I'm hoping that's going to change later this year in October when I'm going to be your neck of the woods for a legal conference.
Yes, super pumped for that. Okay, so Rob, let's first just do a little bit of a background. Tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So plotted history is I started my career in the recruitment industry. Very, very straightforward. Fell into it. Didn't know how, why it was going to happen, but I fell into the recruitment industry. I worked for a big, large corporation. Then I moved to a boutique. And then I always knew I wanted to set up my own business. I'd basically had about half a decade of experience, but nothing linked to legal before I started my new venture. My grandfather ran a successful law firm over here in the UK. So I always knew I wanted to try and emulate some sort of family legacy linked to legal, but also be an entrepreneur and start my own business. So that's kind of how it led me to legal and starting my own legal recruiting business. But as you'll know, Rachel, no one cares that I started a business. That's the harsh reality is nobody cares. So you need to go out there and make people care, make people understand why they should care. And the best way I thought of doing that, rather than competing with competitors that had been established for 10, 20 years, was go to social and understand the importance of building a brand and using digital marketing and using social media and being innovative and being forward thinking. And that's really how my journey all began, because I thought I can't compete with what's already there. So I need to go and do something new where people aren't paying attention to certain things that we'll probably talk about, new vehicles, like when podcasting was a new thing way back when, and sort of go into those to sort of dominate and actually get market share and start making noise and grabbing clients that way. So that's kind of how it all happened, and then why I really took seriously building a personal brand.
So you were way ahead of your time almost, because when did you start the business and start putting yourself out there?
Yeah, so launched the business in 2016. I was sort of thinking about LinkedIn. I'd always, as a traditional recruiter, you know, LinkedIn had been my home. It'd been my platform since 2008, because most people will know LinkedIn was very much that sort of job site. You put up a profile, recruiters would just reach out to you and you would connect and you would find people. And that was what the platform was. But you and I know it's completely evolved since then. And I was sort of seeing that. I was sort of seeing, oh, you could write a status, you could interact a little bit more, because, you know, the thought of 2008, a like button being on LinkedIn would have been crazy, right? And then, you know, you sort of, so I sort of understood that the platform was changing. And I thought, okay, well, there's a real change here in the platform. Maybe I should be changing the way that I visit using this particular tool, because for me, it is a fundamentally key tool to mastering. And so I started kind of 2018, really sort of taking seriously LinkedIn and thinking about strategies and ways to grow and the ways to stand out and the way to position myself properly. And obviously you evolve over time. And I guess that led me to starting a podcast, because the number one thing I thought about was, what am I going to talk about? You know, to stand out to lawyers, you know, you need to be able to give them something that's going to be substantive, that's going to be helpful, but also not heavy. I wanted to make sure I could be myself, because as you know, Rachel, you know, let's be authentic AF. And, you know, it's really important to do that. And I thought the best medium for me to do that is through podcasting. So I started a podcast where I could talk about legal careers. I could talk about the legal technology evolutions. We could talk about, improving diversity and inclusion. We could talk about the state of mental health within the legal profession and what needs to be done to improve it, and have a lot of these conversations linked to the legal industry, and help people, but in a sort of informative, educative, and also entertaining fashion, and stand out. So I used a vehicle as a way to generate content that I could be a thought leader, and I collaborated with people, i.e. partners in law firms, owners of law firms, lawyers, again, because as you all know very well, Rachel, I want their audience. So if I bring them in and interview them, I suddenly open up doors to a new audience as well. So I was very much about focusing in on the industry that I wanted to be known for, collaborating, having a content vehicle that I could really push. And from there, it's obviously been hugely successful. Top 1% of shows in the world. We're sponsored by a legal tech unicorn. We're 5,000 cities, 250 episodes, and it's all fantastic. But it all started with taking a bit of a risk. And so that's what I encourage everyone, think about, how do you want to stand out? What's your best medium for you to stand out? And collaborate with people and be ferociously passionate, and it'll all eventually start getting noticed and getting traction.
Oh, it's so good. Ferociously passionate. What I love about what you're talking about is it didn't just happen overnight. It's like, I don't know if you've seen any of the chatter with the top voice. There's just some people that have been a little bit bitter, like I should get it or something. And let's be honest, it's just a badge. Thank you for the badge. It's going to help. And I really appreciate for that credibility and validity, Robert. But the truth is that you've been doing this day after day for years.
That's correct.
Consistency, and having this passion to really help your field and niching down. And that's such a powerful lesson for the people that are listening or watching this right now. Robert is an amazing example of somebody who just stuck to his niche and how critical that has been in your success. And so often people don't do that. I don't know why. But you've done a great job at that. So props to you.
No, well, thank you. It's very kind of you. And I think maybe it's the case of you need to understand that not everybody's going to care. And that's a good thing. I don't necessarily need to appeal to certain people because A, they're probably not going to be wanting to be part of my community. And B, they're probably not going to be a potential client or even referrer. Now, it's good to obviously, have a wider, bigger network. And we all like big networks. But when it comes to actually building a personal brand, I'm always thinking who are the people that I really want to help and who I can give value to and who I can get a value exchange. And so niching has been so important to me, to the extent everything that we do is really strategically thought out in terms of when you're, when you have a podcast and if you're thinking of sponsorship and relationships or partnership relationships or brand deals, where's the alignment and the synergy? And for me, as you know, my overarching company is a legal talent solutions firm where we do a lot of work of helping lawyers into law firms, hiring them and supporting them. So when we're thinking of brand collaborations, well, what about service supply providers that are also sort of selling into law firms? There's a clear strategic synergy there where it's a win-win. So we've always thought about whoever we collaborate with or whatever we do, where can there be not only a win-win, but also an extra potential reach in terms of whatever it might be. So I think that's been another strategy that we've really sort of thought about. And personally, I've thought about in terms of my personal brand and collaborating with the right people with similar values, similar missions, where we can all grow together.
So strategic partnerships, and a lot of that is networking. You're very good at that too, but you're not just doing that with anybody, No. I think that's another really powerful piece of this live is to say, when you're thinking about your personal brand, you need to niche down, but you also need to be networking with the right people and putting yourself out there. And LinkedIn's such a great tool to do that. Have you used LinkedIn a lot to nurture those and create those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always give the story of when we first launched our first episode of the Legally Speaking podcast, where I reached out to the members of a legal society over here, which were a community of about 7,500 lawyers. And I thought, well, I could launch a podcast and just have anybody on. But remember, I'm starting from zero with this agency. Not many people know who I am. Unfortunately, at this stage, not many people really care as much as I care about my business. My family cares about my business, maybe my close friends, but my target clients don't, and they don't know about me, and I haven't earned their trust yet. Right. So when I was thinking about, I used LinkedIn to reach out to people in big societies and organizations, because when you invite them onto your show, you build up the rapport, you do a good job for them, they're going to share that with their 7,500. So you're immediately getting audience jacking and bringing them into your community. So LinkedIn was phenomenal for that in terms of getting to know who are the big legal societies, who are the big organizations, the networks, the people that I can be connecting with that could help me grow through that collaboration. So LinkedIn has been fantastic. And then obviously it's grown over time, and we've seen more and more features come out, and LinkedIn news and articles, and suddenly more and more people get more confident sharing content, and you come across people from a second, third connection, and audio comes out and you can meet people, they come into your room that you haven't had a chance to meet. So again, just embracing the platform and the features and things that come out, even a live like this, so important, because you could just be next to that one or two people that could change your business or take your business to another level. I've always had that mindset.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true, Robert. Okay. So I was reading this, I don't know if it was LinkedIn news. I don't remember where I just read it. I still have the baby mom brain. And because specifically around recruiting, and since you do that, and in a field where AI is going to be it's going to affect the field quite a bit, specifically in the recruiting area. I'm curious for you. I was reading this article. I was saying, how do you know with these candidates? Because so much people can submit, use AI for the resume, but for any cover, for like just whatever, AI, anything. How are you, I don't know, finding a solution for those candidates in that relationship where AI might be a factor? Or are you not even experiencing that in the legal field?
No, I think we're definitely seeing elements of that. I think it comes down to, well, for us as a business, sort of the values and what's important for us. So we are very big on screening, editing, and auditing, and having conversations. So even if we would say, let's say you'd see a resume or a CV that just looks absolutely amazing, that is super enhanced, that looks the best profile ever, that's fantastic. They may get through one stage of a vetting process, but then they would probably have to have a telephone screening call and actually be probed and questioned and talked around. And then obviously there's levels of sort of reference taking, so there are additional layers and processes you can put in place to try and mitigate that risk of AI going too far. But also, I'm a big believer in AI for good. I'm a big believer in, if the right people get the right education, we have enough people, and hopefully there's a lot more safety measures we all know that need to be put into place. But I think, AI, if it can make your CV read clearer or actually sell a better version of you that is you, but maybe just rejig those words to make you sell yourself better, I'm all for that. I absolutely think that is a good utilization of the tool. But where it goes too far to the level of, just completely not true, then obviously that is an issue. But I think just having extra stringent levels of sort of screening and process is what we have, because obviously, it's very easy now for anyone to go on there, write me a one-page resume, making me sound like an exceptional corporate lawyer. Yeah. Well, you're going to have to really sort of make sure when you're screening them that you're asking them certain questions about sort of, okay, what was their involvement? How would they do X? How would they do Y, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think the human conversation, it's almost like we're going to at least maybe go back to the idea of getting on phone calls, getting in front of people, instead of everything being so digital to help with the AI scarcity mindset. Okay. So tell me, what is happening? I know the UK versus the US, across the world. I mean, the legal topic in AI is huge. I mean, I just was listening to Satya Nadella that was being interviewed by Lester Holt, and just like, my God, and like the legal ramifications. What are you hearing? What's your take on this really, really critical topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolution, isn't it? I was saying to, I think, a friend the other day, this whole sort of evolution that we're going through is going to be seismic. Like my 2-year-old daughter, is going to be like, so Dad, you had a pen and a piece of paper and you actually wrote things down, and it's that crazy to sort of where the world we're going. I even saw a video on like people can buy a house off Amazon now. It's crazy, like the world that's going. But when it was specific with AI, I think the interesting conversations in the legal world, of course, are the risks and concerns and privacy and data, particularly also with law firms that are going to be using AI tools. A lot of them are obviously naturally going to be building their own in-house and sort of walling it around to make it a lot more robust, rather than using like a ChatGPT or something like that, which of course has a number of potential concerns or risks attached with them. So I think the really interesting conversation is from sort of the legal side is obviously around the privacy, is around sort of copyrights, infringements, all of those different things. I think are interesting conversations, and I think they're just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, because I think at the end of the day, until there is sort of really stringent and understood regulation, there is always going to be issues. And I think there's always going to be, unfortunately, bad actors, as well as we'd like to hope lots of good actors. And so as a result of that, there is going to be a lot of discussion within the legal world. But in terms of legal for good, AI can be huge in terms of a lot of the lower level tasks and the due diligence and the drafting and things like that. Like that can be a huge time save. And I think that, lots of law firms and lawyers are already adopting those sorts of technologies. And, there's so many legal tech service providers now that are out there, even from sort of contract management to, accounting systems. I had a meeting the other day with sort of, an interesting legal tech accounting business. So, the amount of technology that can get wrapped around law firms is quite staggering compared to what would have been many, many years ago. And I think it's a case of now, particularly in the legal world, where there's always been this risk aversion to, changes in behavior. You can't really get away from not having some form of AI or sort of advanced technology in your business to be efficient, to be able to actually service your clients probably as they would expect, because I think it's coming now to a standard where people really do want to expect, a service. And if you can't meet that in terms of maybe timeframes or quality or whatever it may be, I strongly believe they might consider elsewhere. So I don't think it's a case of sort of, let's just see how it goes. I think you have to educate yourself and move forward. And I think I took a step further off air saying, I think 2024 is the year of the really forward-thinking, innovative businesses do exceptionally well. And I think the businesses that are doing average will have a very, very tough year. So I think it's that state of sort of really educating and really wanting to learn how to sort of transact and do business in 2024. And of course, obviously, the personal branding and social media is a huge part of that, in my opinion, in terms of how you build community, how you potentially build clients, how you get out there, how you get wider opportunities off the back of that. And that's been really helpful for me, particularly as running a business. It's not only does it help in terms of you build a community, you get clients, but it's the wider opportunities. I get to speak at certain events. I've moderated events for Thomson Reuters. I did a collaboration with, Gary Vee's been on LinkedIn Audio, and we've done sort of interviews and things like that. So all these incredible things come your way. By putting yourself out there as well. So I know I've gone in a few different directions, but I just think it's a super interesting time. I'm all for it. And I always say I'm not an expert. I'm always learning. That's the thing. I think never shut yourself off to learning, because I think we've all got something to learn. And, the younger generations have got a hell of a lot of talent. So I'm paying a lot of attention as well to the younger generations and what they're getting up to, because I think they've got a lot of talent that, we can learn from.
I mean, our kids are Gen Alpha. Well, I got the babies, but my 14-year-old, I think he's still Gen Z. I think he's right at the cusp.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they don't, the bigger kids, they barely even know how everything's voiced. Everything is voice. Like the idea of typing is like something they're still learning, because it's the texting, even texting. I'm like, why don't you text? No, they just voice message. So then it's just like one sentence, like 5 sentences. That's one sentence.
Yeah, it's true though, isn't it? And that's where, it's where the attention, if attention is in voice, then, you can't just stay, doing this. It's sort of like where's you just think of the speed and the speed change, you could be just drafting away doing something, or you could just say it in 5-10 seconds. I'm sort of all for smarter not harder. And that's just a very simple example. I also, like, a little hack I used to do, Rachel, is with you get a post on LinkedIn and you have a lot of comments that reply to it. It's like I would actually go to my voice on my notes section on my iPhone and just like read out what I'd want to say to those 15 content, so that I can just copy paste the answers back into them, just because you get so many. So yeah, I'm all for like thinking like that.
Well, now, I mean, and LinkedIn has different AI integrated and is continuing to do so, right? Into writing your job description, writing your about section, writing your headlines, like pretty cool. I'm always like, I always like to see it, and then it's never quite on point, but that's the point, right? The human augmentation. But LinkedIn is definitely doing a lot of cool things with AI. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone's going to say, look, it's not great, but nothing is great when it first starts. Like, things get better and better and better and better and better. There's certain thought leaders in the legal world that have talked about, the changes in jobs that are just going to be created off the back of this through these various technologies. But, you imagine in this conversation 5 years from now, like the AI that LinkedIn has incorporated, maybe that introductory message, or actually the way it's structured in my head, they're getting so much data, like they're getting so much data, and they're going to start understanding that data and understanding how best to really kind of utilize that to improve things moving forwards. That, I think in a few years' time, a lot of the things where people are saying, oh, well, it's not that good really, is it? Or, it's not really going to do this. Yeah. I think there's a lot of barriers up there through fears, just saying that. And I think you've kind of, and that's why I've kind of got on my own sort of self, okay, I need to be in education mode. I need to be in continuous learning. Like, really, now is the time. We all need to be continuously learning and understanding, because the way we do business is so much different. I could be starting a relationship off Instagram, of somebody that potentially, I could do business with. Years ago, that would just be crazy. That's not a thing. Similarly to LinkedIn, it was just a professional networking site. Now you could potentially message your direct prospect or start a connection conversation. You could voice note them. You could even send a video to them, introduction. Like, there's so many different things that you can do, that I'm beyond excited. Like, I always look at the real opportunity for all of us. And the beautiful thing, Rachel, as long as you have an internet connection, we all have the same opportunity, right, with LinkedIn. Of course, there's the paid versions, but I personally have not really used many of the paid versions of LinkedIn over the years. And that's where people have said to me, oh, do you have to pay to make sure you get all this LinkedIn top voice and this, that, and the other? No, it comes back to what you were saying before about being consistent, understanding why you want to be on the platform, who do you want to appeal to, and having those conversations and engaging as well. I think it's very important to mention, this is something I know you and Josh do very, very well with your community, is you engage with them. It's not a case of, this is Rob, I have conversations, you interact with people, you make them feel seen, heard, valued. And then, of course, from that, things organically grow. But consistency is important. None of this comes overnight. But the reason I was consistent is because I understood the value. I understood what this could do. And it wasn't a case of it's going to give me an overnight success. And I think people who, in my opinion, you need to sort of understand, like, doing this needs to be important enough to you. So for me, this was important enough for me to invest the time to really build a personal brand. It really meant enough to me in terms of where I wanted to take my business and how I wanted to stand out in a very crowded and saturated market. So I think for people, don't just do this because I've said to do it. Like, understand, like, could this be a really good game changer for me to stand out as a thought leader? Could this potentially get me higher ticket clients that I'm trying to get to work with and interact with? Could this potentially get me opportunities that I couldn't get through the door before? And, could this get me those connections that could be super helpful that I could help recruit on board for my own business? Because that's the other thing as well. If you get you get going with your personal brand in your community and you're trying to grow your own business, you can be very great in terms of attracting talent. I've seen lots of people do this, but also certain legal professionals who have built their own personal brands. Shout out to my good friend Jodie Hill. She's a lawyer in the UK, and she's doing a phenomenal thing with Thrive Law, and also sort of growing her firm through that, and just being authentic leadership. So again, people are watching, so there's just so many benefits to doing all of this. And by the way, it is fun once you start getting into it, right, Rach? I know obviously it's hard work, but it is fun as well, building this sort of global global community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is fun. And it's also, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and you're creating your own business, you don't have a choice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, you must be visible online and on places like LinkedIn and perhaps YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or wherever that might be where your audience is. So you don't have a choice. And then if you are an employed professional, I also believe you don't have a choice in building your personal brand, although most don't see it that way. Most people, what I've found is they don't really think about how am I connecting, how am I profiling, all this stuff until they don't have a job or until they are like, you know what, I hate this job. I want to start my own thing. And now you're 50 years old, let's say, and you haven't been doing any of that when you could have been working on it the last 15 years. So there's just amazing benefit for what we're talking about here.
I agree. And I always talk about your personal brand being your biggest asset, but also your greatest insurance policy. And you gave that really good example because, you know, we've been through pandemics, we've been through recessions, we've been through layoffs, we've been through, you know, horrible, horrible times. But the reality is, if you have invested the time in building up that personal brand, then as a result of that, naturally your networks, you probably built a network and connections. So if you find yourself in that unfortunate situation where maybe you are finding yourself being laid off, that hard yards that you've put in terms of building a personal brand, you know, the likelihood is you're probably going to get some warm introductions or find your next opportunity a lot quicker. Equally, your greatest asset, because if you're sort of in a role, the likelihood is you're probably going to get better speaking opportunities. You're going to get opportunities to get in front of other people that you may not necessarily have getting involved with. Or like you say, if you want to go off and start your own business, you're not starting from zero. You've probably got people, those lurkers on LinkedIn that may not necessarily ultimately engage with you, but they're watching you. They're the ones who'll probably be giving you the messages directly saying, congratulations, something up. I've actually been following your journey for the last 2.5 years. What you've been posting about is really related to me. Yeah, would love to see how we can work together. Like it's powerful stuff.
Yes, it really is. Rob, this has been such a good conversation. As we close out today, if you had one helpful takeaway for people listening, what do you think that would be?
I did a video about this on Sunday, actually, when I actually said thank you for the LinkedIn. Bet on you. I think there's so much fear of being judged, fear of failing, fear of just, you know, other people's opinion, whatever it may be. I would say I got out of my comfort zone and got over myself to do this, for building a brand, you know, for starting a podcast, for starting a business, for doing all of these various things. Because I had enough internal self-confidence to bet on myself. So everyone has a value. Everyone has something to give. I strongly, strongly, strongly believe that. So just make 2024 the year that you actually do bet on yourself and go all in. And I don't think you'll regret it.
Ooh, that's good. It's kind of like you know what you're talking about, you know?
Well, hopefully.
Oh, it's been so great to have you on today. For everybody, please follow Rob. He's got a newsletter, he's got a podcast, he's got so much going on. So he's a fantastic person. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this February. Excited to be back again next month with another wonderful guest. Have a great weekend and month.